Hey fellas, how are you? Erkan is back with a new video, and once again, I want to analyze the current state of Tesla, SPY, Video, the Q, and a few other tickers. In addition, let's analyze the general state of affairs between Iran and Israel and explain why an increasing number of announcements are causing the market to decline. I will also discuss the current state of the economic calendar because tomorrow we have a lecture from Jerome P. Before we go into this information, here are some things to keep an eye out for on the Tesla and beyond charts. Let me just touch on a few points before going into further detail. First off, don't take anything I say as financial advice because I'm not a financial planner. Additionally, if it's possible, kindly click the Webull link that appears in the description and below. You will receive 20 free stocks upon signing up for Webull and making a $500 deposit. You're guaranteed 75 of them and offers very soon in only 2 weeks if you deposit $25,000 or more. In any case, I simply wanted to let you know that the daily chart for Tesla is negative. On Tesla, we see this high up here. We descended, made a lower high, and then we descended again, steadily making lower highs and lower lows. Additionally, a structure like a triple bottom is already forming, therefore Tesla has to bounce off this support. There will be a larger drop if we are unable to bounce off 160, and we will be testing this support immediately. In other words, it's pretty easy. As you can see, there is a tiny blue line with dots here. That represents the current share price of Tesla, by the way. That means that should we lose that support, we might drop all the way to the 150 region, 155, and eventually 155, and eventually 152. Should we fail to maintain 152, there would be a significant gap to close at 144. Therefore, if we lose this support, Tesla's price could drop significantly. That would be the first major warning sign for the company. It will therefore continue to sink unless it makes an attempt to bounce here. Technically, I want to be really clear about that. Thus, the inquiry is what is influencing Tesla. For what reason is Tesla pessimistic? Why is the market declining in this manner? Before I break down these charts, I'm going to go into further detail about this. What in the world is happening? In my video from yesterday, I predicted that the markets would rise if there was positive news that Israel and Iran were somewhat diffusing their conflict. However, there might be additional negative outcomes if Iran or Israel kept the situation escalating. In my video from yesterday, I was rather explicit about that. The situation was improving at the time I shot my main video yesterday, and there was a lot of positive news, so I was hopeful that would lead to some sort of uptick in the market. However, I did advise you to be ready to go in the other direction as well in case something unexpected happens. And then this new thing was released. As a reminder, this war has existed for thousands of years. It would be endless and useless to point fingers and argue who started what. Iran, having lost several of its leaders following Israel's invasion of a portion of Syria, launched a retaliatory offensive on Israel. Following that, Iran launched over 300 ballistic and cruise missiles towards Israel over the course of the weekend, with Israel's defense system intercepting 99% of them. Even though that was highly costly as well, it was still a great decision for them. Thus, our hope was that the situation would just become more calm. The U.S. is advising Israel to cool down and exercise restraint, and Russia, China, and other nations are telling Iran to do the same. Rather, the war cabinet and the head of Israel's armed forces are adamantly stating that they wish to react to Israel's attack. They're going to react, they're going to fight back, and they're upset about it. As a result, one side attacked the other side attacked the other, and they are only quote-unquote defending one another. It is like this back and forth. After that, Israel is now claiming that they want to defend themselves, and Iran wants to do the same. It was just chaos before. It was pure lunacy. It's just horrifying to learn about the loss of innocent lives that will occur. Ultimately, though, we can all agree that we want peace and that we are not taking sides. Here's what I want to say. This is not going away. It is getting stronger, and it is getting scarier by the minute. All right, this will have a significant impact on crude oil and the Federal Reserve, which is crucial because it is not going away and because Israel is now threatening to attack Iran, which is bad news. The market is reacting to this, and the news that was just released caused the market to collapse. Although the market attempted to recover a little in the morning, it began to collapse shortly after the news was released, a few hours after the market opened. For this reason, the market is reacting as it is. Yes, it is extremely upsetting to learn about that, but that is the reality. The situation is not getting better, it is getting worse. What other factors might impact the market? Then, to some degree, before the market opens at 9:15 a.m., there will be some industrial and manufacturing production figures. The 42-day and 52-week bill auctions will be released at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and aside from that, we'll be keeping an eye on what else occurs. Watch out for some volatility during those times. In addition, at 1:15 p.m., the legendary Jerome Powell will be giving a speech and participating in a discussion with the governor of the Bank of Canada. Whatever Jerome Powell says in Washington, D.C. will be extremely significant as he will be discussing a lot of economics and current events. There is a high probability that Jerome Powell will respond to another vice chair's speech on monetary policy during uncertain times. They will discuss monetary policy during such times and may also address the Israel-Iran conflict. This will have a significant impact on the markets, so there may be significant volatility when Jerome Powell speaks tomorrow at 1:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. In addition, we have Bank of America, Morgan Stanley, and United scheduled for results tomorrow. I won't go into too much detail. Regarding these, I sort of reviewed the morning's ones. Goldman Sachs saw a strong bounce and performed reasonably well, exceeding forecast and EPS, among other things. T. Schwab's earnings were very, very mixed nonetheless. They did not meet all of their expectations, particularly with regard to bank deposits, and their outlook was not very strong overall. Regarding petroleum, it has increased somewhat and is currently at this level, but if the disputes between Israel and Iran continue, it may rise even further. For this reason, it is crucial to exercise caution as it might have a significant impact on inflation. In regards to Tesla, as I mentioned earlier, the company plans to lay off more than 10% of its global workforce, or over 14,000. Company, which is extremely significant because as of December 2023, the company employed over 140,000 people. His statement that they would be laying off more than 10% of their workforce implies that over 14,000 employees will be let go from Tesla. This is not good news for Tesla investors, as it simply highlights the need for the company to reduce costs. Global events like ongoing conflicts and geopolitical challenges also have a significant impact on Tesla. Wells Fargo has maintained that Tesla is going to have an underweight rating. Citigroup gave Tesla a neutral rating, and Jefferies is saying to hold on to your shares. The price-earnings ratio is dipping a bit as Tesla's not showing the most of strength, and historically Mondays tend to be green 53% of the time, Tuesdays are green about 51% of the time, but this doesn't matter as much as we have external factors affecting them. Look for volatility at 10 a.m., 11 a.m. And then also at around the second to last hour of the day, these seem to be the most volatile hours for Tesla, and historically April and May are not the strongest of months, but June tends to be a much better month. So we'll see how things go for Tesla from here. The market was due for a pullback. We're finally starting to get that, and that's going to affect Tesla. Tesla had 99 million in volume, has dropped on a little bit higher than average volume, despite the fact that short volume is dropping just a little bit. So the question is, what's going to happen to the markets? What is my prediction? What do I think is going to break down on these charts? Well, we have Jerome Powell giving a speech that could be unpredictable, but what I can tell you is that Tesla's at critical support right now. So I showed you guys the daily chart earlier. I showed you guys that we have to hold 160. If Tesla loses this, there's going to be a big risk of coming all the way down to like 152. Watch resistance at 162.5. 165, and then 168. Watch support 155, and then 152. My gut is telling me we're going to see Tesla kind of rebound a bit, grab liquidity in the very, very low 160s, and it's going to later on, either tomorrow or as the time goes on, as the conflict between Israel and Iran continues, okay, as if this does not ease up, there's going to be a risk of Tesla losing 160, which is going to be a big, red flag that could lead to us just sinking all the way down to 152. So look for this to potentially gap up, pop a bit, and then eventually start sinking down. And I think that there's going to be a risk of 152 for SPY. I just want to make it very clear that SPY has something else very interesting on its daily. Let me just pull up the daily chart for a bunch of different tickers just to show you guys the much easier picture. It's very simple. So SPY, if you look at the chart, look at the daily, looks pretty weak. We have this giant gap at 497 to fill, also support at 500 if we lose this. Gap support at 503, it's going to easily come down to about 500, and then 497 below that. I think those are going to be some targets for the next week or so. It could happen over the next couple of days because of this whole conflict and the entire situation when it comes to the QQQ. There's also a big gap to fill at 425. There's a risk of that potentially coming. Watch for that over the next few weeks. And then on Nvda, there's also this gap over here at 825. It's going to likely come down to fill that. So those are some gaps worth noting on the daily time frames. Just wanted to call those out real quick before I break down everything else. So just know all these stocks have big gaps below and they're going to likely get filled. And just to show you Tesla's one more time, let me just show you Tesla's before I break down these other charts. Tesla has that big gap to fill at 146 technically, or 144, somewhere around there. And then We might fill that gap, but in order for that to happen, we have to first lose 160. We might pop a bit tomorrow and then end up losing it either tomorrow or later on. If that ends up being the case, there's going to be a risk of it coming down to 152 all over again. If you look at Tesla's chart, the daily is looking bearish, so there is definitely a risk. On top of that, just want to make that as clear as possible. Anyways, the daily on SPY is looking a bit more bearish. We're going to transition to the hourly time frame just to break down more scalp levels and like much tighter levels, because I think that it's important to go over these. So I think what could happen tomorrow is we're going to try to attempt to gap up a little bit. We could try to test, 507 around that area all over again, and then we may continue lower and start sinking all the way down towards 500, if not 497. I see a risk of dropping lower. Look for a little rebound consolidation and a move even lower, and we could see this continue to fall close to the 500. I think SPY is going to eventually come down to 497 over the next week or so, so be on the lookout for that. Might rebound a bit first and eventually make our way down much lower on the QQQ. I'm seeing the same thing. The QQQ has resistance at 432. We also have 434 above that. We have support at 429, 427, and then 425, which is where the gap fills is. I think it's going to pop a little bit, retest 434 to 434 C, this range right here. Then eventually make our way all the way down to 425. That's my next target on the